Good day. Over the course of last week, Russia hosted what is called the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum at its second capital, St. Petersburg. This is a gathering of the Russian leadership and various business leaders and media personalities, as well as occasional world leaders, which comes together to St. Petersburg every year, and which, in my opinion, functions in effect as a kind of glorified 5-day press conference in which the Russian leadership discusses with these business leaders, media personalities, and other world leaders its policies, both in Russia and externally. SPIEF, as it is widely called, is sometimes compared with Davos, the famous meeting of the great and the good, or perhaps the not so great and the not so good, that takes place every year in the Swiss resort city of Davos, which brings together all the big power brokers and from around the world. I've never thought that comparison actually made much sense to me. In Davos, big decisions are debated and talked about and made. At SPIEF, as I said, it's basically a case of the Russian leadership showcasing its ideas. But nonetheless, SPIEF does provide a venue for various Russian leaders to sound out and to talk about various things that interest them. And of course, the star turn is always the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin himself. And it is about one comment that President Putin made over the course of SPIEF, which I'm going to discuss in this video. Now, this comment was made on the very last day, on Friday, at a meeting between Putin and the heads of various international media organizations. Putin describes this meeting, which takes place right at the end of the SPIEF session, as for him a dessert at the end of the banquet. In other words, an opportunity which he enjoys to actually meet the press and interact with the press and give the various quips and comments that he is many ways famous for. Putin, by the way, loves that kind of interaction with the media, and he's a natural at it. Well, over the course of that meeting with the news agencies, he made this very extraordinary comment about the United States. And this is the comment that I wish to discuss, because though it is in some ways a humorous one, it is also one which in itself is actually important and interesting and very revealing, both about what he thinks and about what the Russian leadership thinks and about Russia's future direction. And this is what Putin said. The problem of empires is that they think they are so powerful that they can afford small inaccuracies and mistakes. But problems keep piling up, and at some point they are no longer able to cope with them. And the United States is now walking the Soviet Union's path, and its gait is confident and steady. Now, that is a very remarkable statement for various reasons. The first point to make is that it is the first time, to my knowledge, at least that I'm aware of, that Putin has actually referred to the United States as an empire. Of course, many people talk in that way, but this is Putin saying that the United States is an empire and talking about the United States as an empire which is very powerful, but which is making small inaccuracies and mistakes which are accumulating. The second point I would make is that this is the first time that I know of Putin making a direct comparison between the United States and the Soviet Union in a way which suggests that the United States is heading in the same direction as the Soviet Union once did and will one day share its fate. That is a very remarkable thing, something which, to my knowledge, not only he has never done before, but no other top member of the Russian leadership has ever done either. To repeat again the exact words, the United States is now walking the Soviet Union's path, and its gait is confident and steady. In other words, the United States is drunk with power, just as the Soviet Union once was, and is making more and more mistakes as it goes along, and those mistakes are accumulating and becoming acute, and at some point they will overtake and overwhelm the United States, just as the many mistakes the Soviet Union made overwhelmed the Soviet Union. What mistakes does Vladimir Putin have in mind when he says this? Well, I think probably he has many, but I suspect that by and large he would focus on two. The first is that I think that he, like many people, must be extremely troubled by the direction of US economic policy. I should say that in the 1980s, shortly after Mikhail Gorbachev became leader of the Soviet Union, the Soviet leaders embarked on a policy known as acceleration. This was an attempt to accelerate the economic growth of the Soviet economy in order to resolve its various structural problems by basically pumping up spending. What that did was that it led to a surge in inflation, which in turn led to a political crisis and an economic crash, which caused the Soviet Union to unravel, and which provided a major backdrop to the political crisis which eventually brought about its end. And I think that Putin, who has never forgotten that experience, and who has often, by the way, referred to it, as have other members of his government, looking at the United States, is seeing that the United States is repeating many of the same mistakes that the Soviet leaders made in the 1980s. At the present time, the United States also is trying to boost economic growth by ramping up spending in disregard of any concept of financial limits. And I think that Putin expects that before very long, that is going to catch up with the United States. It's going to precipitate an economic crisis in the United States, just as it did in the Soviet Union, and that there will be a surge in inflation, and then that will in turn lead to a political crisis, which perhaps he expects or thinks may be existential, just as the crisis that took place in the 1980s proved to be for the Soviet Union. That is one mistake that I think Putin thinks the United States is making. The second mistake, which I think Putin thinks the United States is making, and which repeats those that the Soviet Union made, is that I think he thinks that just as the Soviet Union overextended itself in the 1970s and 1980s by involving itself in too many disputes and conflicts in too many parts of the world, draining its power and its influence and expending its energy on issues of peripheral importance to itself, the United States is today doing the same thing. It is in confrontation everywhere with someone. It is in confrontation with Russia in Europe. It is in confrontation with China in the Far East. It is in confrontation with Iran in the Middle East. It is pursuing all sorts of complicated strategies in Africa and in Latin America. Its fleets are moving in every part of the world. It even gets itself worried when fishing fleets, Chinese fishing fleets, approach the Philippine coast. And this is debilitating and exhausting. Firstly, it is exhausting in economic terms because resources which ought to be used to build up the economy are at the center, are being expended by pursuing these policies, these attempts at foreign policy intervention around the world. But I think he also thinks that one consequence of all of this is that the minds of US leaders, instead of being focused on the problems of their own country, like those of the Soviet Union, are devoted incessantly and inordinately to the problems of other countries, many of them very far away from the United States. So I think those are probably the two big mistakes, the two big problems that Putin thinks that the United States is making, which repeat those of the Soviet Union. But just think again of the incisiveness of the man. You may agree or disagree with Putin's view. You may think that his claim that the United States is walking the Soviet Union's path and that its gait is confident and steady is actually overstated. You may question whether the United States really is going to bring itself to that point of existential crisis which the Soviet Union once did. But how many leaders around the world are able to express themselves in this pithy and frank and direct way? Very few, in my opinion. Anyway, what does this tell us about Putin's policies? Well, I think there has been some discussion, including, by the way, I've noticed some discussion on threads to some of my videos about whether or not this alignment that Russia currently has with China is for real, whether the Russians might perhaps rethink their policies, and if President Biden comes up with a good offer at his forthcoming meeting with Putin in a week's time, whether perhaps the Russians will distance themselves from China and realign a bit more closely with the United States. We know that there are some people in the United States who hope and believe that that will happen and who are advocating US offers to Russia in order to get Russia to distance itself from China to, in effect, end its ever-growing, ever-closer alliance with China. Well, I think that the man who says that the United States is walking the Soviet Union's path and that its gait is confident and steady is not going to be in the slightest bit influenced by those offers. At a simple and basic level, who chooses the setting sun in place of the rising sun? If Putin really believes that the United States is going the same way as the Soviet Union, then why would he want to connect himself and Russia to what he clearly believes is a declining and failing power? But even if perhaps he's overstating things, surely what this comment shows is that as far as he is concerned, the United States, like the Soviet Union, is a country which is incapable of flexibility and compromise, and one that Russia today will have to have the least to do with. Contrast these comments that Putin made about the United States with what he said about China. And these were his words. You mentioned a treaty of good neighbourliness and friendly cooperation that undoubtedly played a very important part in the development of Russian-Chinese relations, which acquired indeed an absolutely unprecedented nature in terms of their quality and level of interaction. Yet you and I understand the issue is not in the treaty, although this is a very important document, an important landmark. The issue is that Russia and China have a lot of coinciding interests. This is what lies at the core of our interaction. In other words, it is in Russia's interests, as well as in China's interests, that the two countries work closely together. And that is not going to change, regardless of what happens when Putin meets with Biden in Geneva. Russia's course, Putin's course, is set. His relationship with China is unbreakable. As for relations with the United States, clearly he doesn't want them to get even worse than they are, though I think he anticipates that before very long they will. But from his perspective, whatever the US may offer him in Geneva, it's not going to be enough to wean him away from his de facto alliance with China. As I said before, who chooses the setting sun in place of the rising one? Thank you for joining me for this program. I look forward to you joining me in future programs on this channel. Please also check out our main channel, The Duran, where I do programs with my colleague and friend Alex Christoforou. Please also check out Alex's channel. You'll find links under this video. Please also check us out on our other platforms, BitChute, Odyssey, SuperU and Locals. And please, to the extent that you can, support us via PayPal, Patreon and Subscribestar. And don't forget to check out our Discord server and to go to our shop and see the wonderful things that we offer you there. Our amazing magic mugs, our hats, our t-shirts, our sweatshirts, our hoodies, and all the rest. And lastly, if you like this video, please remember to press the like button and please check your subscription to this channel. And thank you very much for joining me today. And I look forward to you joining me soon in future videos. And thank you again and have a wonderful day.